Climate change! A topic that engulfs humanity in its toxicity. A topic that seems to bore the majority of us. Maybe because it's daunting, or maybe because the majority of us do not realize and understand how each and every individual on Earth can positively contribute to battling climate change! We must all unite together on a quest we will inevitably embark on if we want this planet to be habitable for future generations. But first, we need to be knowledgeable of the intricacies of global warming and how each individual can contribute. Here, we will elucidate the imperativeness of nature, reducing consumption, and vegetarianism.
Forests sequester carbon by capturing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and transforming it into biomass through photosynthesis. Peatlands, wetlands, soil, forests, and oceans play a crucial role in absorbing and storing carbon and thus helping to protect us from climate change. Currently, terrestrial and marine ecosystems absorb roughly half of the CO2 emissions humanity generates. Terrestrial ecosystems store about 2,100 gigatons of carbon in living organisms and soil organic matter, almost 3 times as much as is currently present in the atmosphere. However, an increase in global temperatures and severe droughts leads to more forest fires in many regions, which means that some forests that have been effective carbon sinks may become carbon sources. When forests burn, vast amounts of the stored carbon is emitted, but when vegetation in burned areas regrow, it draws this carbon back out of the atmosphere. However, when the recovery of vegetation is very slow or incomplete, for example, where tropical forests are replaced with agricultural land, the carbon that is not recaptured stays in the atmosphere and contributes to climate change. Oceans and coastal ecosystems are important in managing carbon, with the deep ocean storing the large amounts. In the ocean, carbon sequestration is achieved through various chemical and biological processes. Plankton at the ocean surface use photosynthesis to convert CO2 into sugars. Sea creatures consume this phytoplankton and eventually die and sink to the bottom of the ocean, where the carbon converts to sediment and is prevented from being reintroduced into the atmosphere. Since phytoplanktons are the predominant producers in aquatic ecosystems, it is imperative to optimize the conditions in which the phytoplankton are able to conduct photosynthesis. Increasing temperatures and the continual depletion of the ozone layer exposes the phytoplankton cells to excessive solar radiation, thus causing ocean warming and a drastic deficiency of phytoplankton. Therefore, the maintenance of existing natural carbon reservoirs worldwide is essential if carbon capture and storage is to make a major contribution to climate mitigation.
With the effects of climate change increasing, more frequent and intense drought, storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, and warming oceans can directly harm animals, destroy the places they live, and wreak havoc on people's livelihoods and communities. With this reality being inevitable if humanity continues to negate the effects of climate change, immediate action and advocacy needs to be taken to reverse the role that nature will play in global warming. But as of right now, the pulchritude and productivity of nature is evanescing into a destructive entity and unstoppable force. These cataclysmic storms are only the beginning of what is coming in the future and will continue to become more atrocious. Homes will be destroyed, families will be ruined, hearts will be broken, lives will be lost. This will be the foreseen reality if we continue to detract ourselves from this crisis, if we continue to live in a fantasy that our lifestyle is destroying the only planet accessible to humanity. This transition will necessitate a collective effort from each individual from the versatility and beauty of nature to emerge from the nightmarish state. There's a significant potential for cutting future emissions of greenhouse gases through maintaining healthy ecosystems and restoring degraded environments. In particularly, by restoring peatlands and wetlands, replanting forests, and reducing other pressures on nature, anybody can positively contribute to battling climate change by recycling recyclable items, using less paper and wood, reducing the use of pesticides and other water and plant pollutants, using resources sparingly to minimize waste and pollution, and planting more trees. As a collective force, being victorious in the battle against global warming, against ourselves, is undoubtedly possible, but we must be united in this ambition or else humanity will forever be forgotten.
When people think of individual actions that they can take to reduce their resource footprints, they often think about their own use of water, carbon, etc. And while it's important to reduce your individual resource footprint, for example, by turning off the water while brushing your teeth or carpooling to work, people often don't consider the resource footprint of the items they purchase, which is usually much more significant than the individual actions that a person takes. Take a single cotton t-shirt, for example. Every year, 2 billion t-shirts are sold worldwide. I would imagine that you have probably purchased a t-shirt relatively recently. Consider the process to make this shirt. We will start in a cotton field. Growing cotton uses 3% of arable land, 11% of pesticides, and 24% of insecticides. To make matters worse, the extreme use of pesticides is leading to the rise of super weeds, which can only be treated with more pesticides of increased toxicity. The cotton then needs to be transported, often overseas, which requires fossil fuels and releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The cotton then needs to be processed and woven into fabric, another energy-intensive process. Once the fabric is made, it will be bleached and dyed. Textile dyeing is the second largest polluter of clean water. Dye contamination is an extremely prevalent issue in countries such as India and Bangladesh, where it causes severe illness. The processed fabric will then be transported again, producing more greenhouse gases, to a factory where it will be woven into a t-shirt. Once complete, the shirt will then be transported to its final destination, where it will be purchased by us. In this entire process, 2,700 liters of water will be used to make a single cotton t-shirt. Due to the prevalence of fast fashion, this shirt will likely be worn regularly for a short amount of time before it ends up in a landfill, where it will last for years before decomposing. As it decomposes, it will continue to leach toxic chemicals into the environment and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. More than 10 million tons of textile waste ends up in the landfill each year in the US alone. Now imagine choosing to buy one less t-shirt. This one decision will conserve 2,700 liters of water, 0.22 pounds of fertilizer, 0.01 pounds of pesticides, 1.2 pounds of fossil fuels, and countless other resources. T-shirts are not the only product we purchase that have surprisingly large environmental impacts. Due to the complex global production systems, nearly every item we buy has massive resource footprints that are not immediately visible to us. By choosing to consume consciously, we can avoid exacting this toll on our environment. Every time we avoid buying something we do not need, we reduce the countless resources needed for agriculture, mining, transportation, manufacturing, etc. Another option is to purchase used items. Take our example of a t-shirt. By purchasing a t-shirt at a thrift store, you are reducing the demand for one new t-shirt, preventing all these resources from being used. Additionally, you are preventing this t-shirt from ending up in the landfill, providing an even larger environmental benefit. By buying used clothing, electronics, and other items, we can save countless resources, helping to nurture our only home, planet Earth, for the well-being of ourselves and future generations.
As global demand for meat rises, the number of animals needed to be raised for consumption also increases. With the growing number of animals needed to be raised, the need for more feed and water to maintain all these animals increases. 80% of global deforestation is a result of agricultural production, which is also a leading cause of habitat destruction. Farming, animal and plant, accounts for about 70% of water used in the world today. Up to 92% of fresh water, with nearly one-third of that related to animal farming and growing crops to feed to animals. Livestock and their byproducts account for at least 32 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, or 51% of all worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. By going vegetarian, just simply by changing an aspect of your diet, it immediately helps decrease methane and nitrous oxide, the most urgent greenhouse gases. It does more than avoiding air travel, living car-free, and having fewer children. A vegetarian diet is proven to require 2.5 times less the amount of land needed to grow food compared to a meat-based diet. By going vegetarian, it reduces our water footprint by over half, 55%. Not only does going vegetarian have significant impacts on our environment and climate change, it also has a big impact on your health. Since vegetarians don't consume meat, they consume less saturated fat and cholesterol, and instead consume more vitamins such as vitamin C and E, as well as potassium and plant chemicals. This in turn is more likely to lower blood pressure, BMI, and total bad cholesterol, which are all associated with chronic illnesses. Studies also show that people who eat fewer animal products have lower rates of obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, arthritis, and cancer. Of course, we know that it's hard to give up meat. It's good, it's cheaper, it's a big part of people's diet. Even so, there are still other ways to reduce your meat consumption, which will still have a huge impact towards climate change. Not eating animal products for breakfast and lunch saves 1.3 metric tons per year, so you can still eat meat while also making a big difference. Then there's Meatless Monday, which reduces meat consumption by almost 15%. Not eating meat once a week makes a difference as well. Lastly, buy meat that has been sustainably produced. Know where your meat comes from, what goes into the production of your meat, what the animals are being fed, who produces it. It may be a bit more costly, but at least if you know the source, you can know their methods of production.